This is Jilliana Ranicar-Breese, and I have the pleasure of being with Roger Prentice, who is a Doctor of Education, but we won't talk about that because today we're going to talk about street photography, which is Roger's passion. And he's going to show us some really interesting portraits. This is a self-portrait. This is in Brighton because you've just come to live in Brighton. And tell me where that was exactly, Roger?
It is in a cafe up St James's Street. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But I recently discovered some more apps on the iPhone, and I very much like texture, black and white texture. Really, it was at its height, I suppose, in about the 70s. And you can now recreate texture in that kind of way and tonal values in that kind of way using apps, all as part of digital photography.
Yes. Well, your turning point, you said, was in Budapest. When was that?
It was about 8 years ago, I'm guessing, something like that. And I'd been interested in photography all my life, but I didn't really know what my forte was. I mean, so I looked at people who were doing portraiture, people that were doing documentary stuff and so on. But I went with my wife and a group of artists to Budapest, and I just discovered street photography. And so the whole of that visit was made up of me taking photographs and tagging on behind and having to run to catch up.
And were they in colour, or did you change them to black and white?
No, they weren't primarily black and white, but as you know, in digital photography you can change any photograph.
That's right.
Either sepia or black and white or whatever you like. But the really significant thing was that I found my forte.
Yes.
And street photography.
Yes.
And I've studied street photography as well as tried to practice it.
Yes.
Quite a lot, and I think it's the supreme genre in photography.
And would you call street portraiture also street photography? Or...
I think it's an allied genre. There are several very important differences. Usually, if you take a photograph of someone in street portraiture, they know that they're being photographed.
Yes, and they pose.
And they pose.
Yes.
It's not candid. You may have, in fact, negotiated permission to take their photograph.
Yeah.
But street photography is much more about things that come together just for a moment. Somebody's head walking behind a plant, so it looks as though their head, in fact, is a plant.
Well, the famous one was the kiss, Duano's The Kiss,
Sure.
because apparently it wasn't natural. That's what I read, anyway.
Well, quite often, very famous images of the sailor kissing the girl in Paris, for example, at the end of the Second World War.
Oh.
That was reposed as well.
Don't know that one.
So it wasn't a candid photograph, but everybody loves it, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Who did that one?
I can't remember offhand. It might have been Cartier-Bresson, but it might have been someone else.
And what about Ouija? Do you know his work? American Ouija.
Oh yes, yes. No, fantastic. Well, you see, again, he was a bloodhound after
the crimes had been committed.
The crimes and the pool of blood.
Yeah.
And he got tip-offs from friends in the police force and so
Yes.
on. So I don't consider that to be street photography.
Brassai? Brassai?
Yes, almost all the French photographers seem to have done a certain amount of street photography, right from the very first photograph, which I showed you earlier, which was the photograph taken from very high up. And
have you got it?
Not easily to hand at the moment. It was a shoe shine guy shining someone's, and that is thought by most people, no one's disproved it yet, that taken in 1838 was the first not only photograph with a human being in, but of course the first street photograph.
Have you got another one there to
yes,
show me, please?
Absolutely. Yes, we have. And so that was one of a series. So I talked about the grain and so on in here. And it's wonderful that in digital photography you can recapture some of the old wet photography or film photography. So this
Show me the one of you in the window.
Um,
You showed it to me earlier. Self-portrait.
yes. Well, I'll show you something on the way, if I may.
Okay.
I very much like abstracts as well. And this is an abstract photograph, which is actually based on that hole in the glass
Yes.
that you saw.
The
And then
shuttered window.
I worked on it in various ways. So I really like painterly photographs that are slowly built up in order to look like an abstract painting.
Okay.
So that's that particular one. I think I can go back and find the others. This one was a recent photograph, as you know, which was taken out there. I was very struck by the triangularity of this couple here. In deep conversation, the violinist is ignored by everyone. There's this family grouping here. So there's a kind of triangle of, and you could in fact recrop it, but I like the fact that there are these three groupings.
Okay.
And the groupings, of course, as with everything, I think in street photography, come together accidentally. It's the happy accident that your sensibility has to be waiting for, and very often
you have to have the eye.
You have to have the eye, and you have to be able to shoot in many cases in milliseconds,
Yeah.
not in even seconds.
I know.
Yeah. So shall we move on? See if there's something else.
Yes.
Okay. So this is not the best way to do it, but it may be interesting enough. Here we are. So I'm going to move through this.
Time is ticking on, Roger.
A lot of photographs. So that was also in the self-portrait. Like a lot of street photographers, I like.
And where was that?
Interesting It was shot. In North Street.
Okay.
So mirrors are, they're like baubles to street photographers. So many great photographers and us lesser mortals as well are attracted to mirrors and what can be done in terms of distortion. But for me, that's a self-portrait.
Well, I must show you my photographs taken in Vilnius, Lithuania.
Yes.
Because they're all distorted.
This is a well-known sort of
that's very good.
sub-genre in street photography, and the use of reflections in photographs like that gives a sense of presence and a sense of ghostliness and a sense of people who've passed by and depths of image that are really about depths of meaning and what's going on in the people's lives, what's going on in the society, and so on. So it creates a kind of three-dimensionality, that a 3D effect that isn't normally part of photography.
Have you met anybody in their reflection in a window, in a mirror?
I
have.
I see what you mean. This photograph is one I took. It was a snapshot from a bus, and unfortunately I've lost the original file, so I can't print it large. I call it the Primark Gucci lady. I only realised that was the case. I lived with the photograph for a long time.
Where's the Gucci bit?
And somebody else pointed it out to me. That one of the bags, I think that's the Primark one, and I think the Gucci one is there.
Carrier bag, a Gucci carrier
bags, okay. Yes. But it is in fact
And where was that taken?
It in London, a homage to a very, very famous photograph by Cartier-Bresson, where a man is leaping over a puddle at...
I know that one, yes. Okay, thank you very much, Roger, and I look forward to part 2. Thank you.